Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back with VC Andrew's Critiquer. Tonight we got the old versus new on the Stepford Wives. So this is definitely going to be something new for me. It's been a while since I've seen this. Actually, never really heard of this show. I do remember the remakes, recap of it, but that's about all I know from this movie, I guess. So how about we take a look and see what the heck happened in the Stepford Wives. So be sure to subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go.
Hello fans, it's the VC Andrews Critiquer. In 1972, when the civil rights movement and progressivism was starting to make significant, progress, Ira Levine introduced us to a satire of that cruel discrimination that activists have been working so hard to fight against, which in turn was made into two movies. I'm of course talking about the Stepford Wives.
It's about what happens when Joanna Eberhardt moves with her husband Walter and two kids to a peaceful suburban community called Stepford in the hopes of starting a fresh new life after a somewhat strained relationship. At first, it seems like a pretty good place to live. The neighborhood is nice, the taxes are low, and Joanna makes a nonchalant but caring best friend named Bobby Markowitz. But the two find something isn't quite right about the town, as virtually all of the other women there seem to only have two passions: pleasing their husbands and doing the best housework any housewife has ever done. No careers, no social lives, no hobbies, just cleaning their house from morning to night. At first they're like, everyone has their own interests, who are we to judge? But the ladies' behavior starts to seem less like housewives and more like mindless zombies. Dare I say, even a bit robotic at times. And with more of their friends starting to follow suit, the two start to wonder if the mysterious Stepford Men's Association might be a bit more than just a hangout club for the guys in the community, and things don't look too great when their husbands are accepted and want Stepford wives themselves. I can't really give a definite answer on how the original book was received because I couldn't really find many reviews published when it was released. But given the term Stepford wife has often become a common term for housewives with no passion besides housework, the decent number of spoofs and references it's had in pop culture, and the fact that it spawned two adaptations, I'm sure it was pretty good. But I can give input on the reception for the two film adaptations. The first came out in 1975 with a screenplay by Princess Bride writer William Goldman. While its initial critical and box office earnings were average at best, and Goldman and Levine were not too psyched about some of the rewrites with the wives, I'll detail this a bit later. It has become a classic sci-fi thriller in its own right, and even spawned several TV sequels about other family members being Stepfordized, one of which even had Marge Simpson voice actress Julie Kavner. No, I haven't seen any of them, but I hear they're decent. Maybe I'll check them out sometime. And the second adaptation in 2004, taking the story in a more comedic and less faithful approach than the 75 adaptation. Despite Frank Oz as the director and an all-star cast, this movie had a ton of production troubles, lazy rewrites, and a completely unnecessary and contrived plot twist, which ended up in the movie sucking hard. And boy did its critical reception and box office earnings indicate such. So, just as a disclaimer, this old versus new is probably going to be my most one-sided comparison yet, but that doesn't mean there's nothing nice to say about the 2004 film. I mean, Frank Oz is the director, and there was potential to the more comedic direction that I'll discuss a little later, but the execution really screwed it up, which even Oz himself admits. So let's prepare to battle some cookie-baking robots and misogynist evil scientists as we compare these two movies. This is old versus new, the Stepford Wives.
You know, before we get to it, now this premise wasn't almost like Don't Worry Darling, the recent hit, or at least sort of hit? Instead of robots, they're pretty much in virtual reality, and the men are pretty much out trying to get a job, and the ladies are stuck in, virtual reality, just relaxing, I guess, in a way, but yeah, they're basically held prisoner. Yeesh. Not good. Not good. Let's be real, if that happened today, none of them would see the light of day. Ever. Anywho, moving on. There we go.
We've had some great women's rights activists over the years, from Susan B. Anthony, Gloria Steinem, and that's just to name a few. But none of them have had to deal with a town as sexually archaic as Stepford, So which version of our heroine stands more of a chance at progressing the cookie-baking, mind-controlled wives of the town? Well, let's find out with Best Joanna.
Come on, get smart, tune up and start. Whistle while you work.
Our protagonist, Joanna Eberhard, is played respectively by Catherine Ross and Nicole Kidman. Her main motive behind moving to Stepford from the big city was in the hope of finding a simpler, calmer, and more marriage-strengthening life. Too bad the town she chose strengthens marriages in favor of the husbands. But my problem with the new Joanna is, she's kind of a chauvinist herself. In this version, she used to host a television series frickin' called I Can Do Better that made women seem superior to men in every way, and even had one sketch basically say that it's fine for wives to cheat on and abandon their husbands for a bunch of other more handsome guys, and if the husband was completely loyal to them in their lifetime, well...
But I can do better!
Hell, just listen how sympathetic she was to the husband whose marriage she wrecked on the show.
I know it hurts. Love isn't easy. Relationships aren't easy, not for anyone. But now you know the truth about Barbara, and you are gonna move on with your life.
And no, that's not nearly as bad as brainwashing / replacing your wives with subservient robot zombies, nor does it justify the guy shooting up the place, the bad publicity from the incident resulting in Joanna getting fired and blacklisted from TV, but that is still pretty sexist and pretentious in itself. Hell, when she first meets the cookie-baking Stepford Wives, she seems creeped out by them right from the start. Even when they're going to the town 4th of July party just after meeting them, Joanna's like, let's get out of here as quickly as possible. I don't want to be seen with these archaic losers. So this makes it seem like her concerns over the 50s housewife behavior of the Stepford Wives are more like a blow to her pride as a 21st century progressive woman than genuine concern for the equality and well-being of her new neighbors. I can't act like Ross's Joanna is the most intriguing protagonist I've seen in media, but I found her a hell lot easier to root for than Kidman's Joanna. For one thing, her determination to solve the mystery of the mindless zombie housewife apocalypse in Stepford and save the other women is always at the forefront of the action. And hey, a detective is usually a pretty easy protagonist to get invested in. Kidman's Joanna doesn't get to play Nancy Drew quite as often, unfortunately. And more importantly, her motivations feel a lot more like genuine care for the well-being of the other women in Stepford. At first, she doesn't really mind their outdated lifestyles, but when it starts getting unnerving, she actually takes the time to go to each woman's house with Bobby and basically say, look, we want to be respectful of your life choices, but there is a bit more to life than cleaning houses. Why don't you live a little as well? Hell, she even tries to arrange sort of a get-together with the other wives to try and connect with them by discussing their issues and make them realize the joys of a social life. Too bad this is their biggest concern to bring to the table.
I didn't bake anything yesterday. It took me so long to get the upstairs floor to shine. I didn't have any time to bake.
Well, you don't have to bake, kid. There's no law.
Hell, just look at how devastated she gets when she finds Bobby Stepfordized.
Bobby, stop it! Look at me! Say I'm right! You are different, your figure's different, your face, what you talk about, all of this is different! Yes!
The new Joanna isn't completely unlikable, though. She is a good person deep down and can be kind of funny at times. Hell, I wouldn't have minded the sexist attitude she had herself if there was a scene where she realized, oh god, am I really any better than the Men's Association? Well, I may not be a psychotic evil scientist, but I'm kind of a misogynist myself. That could have been a pretty effective, am I just like the bad guy scene in the movie? But as you'll soon find out, utilizing concepts are not the remake's strength. So this pretentious attitude and less dedication to solving the mystery of the Stepford Wives makes the new Joanna a bit too unsympathetic for my liking. Again, the
Kidman version kind of seems like she just stumbled her way through the investigation. The older one, in the original, yeah, you can definitely feel she did try to make an effort to, figure out what the heck is going on with these girls. Like, she realized, whatever. But then she was like, wait a minute. And just did her best to see what the heck is going on with the root problem at all. Which, again, makes sense. I kind of like that. Good job. Anyway.
The original Joanna is by no means the best written character, but her determination to crack the case of the Stepford Wives, as well as her more genuine concern for the well-being of the other women in Stepford, makes her much more easy to support throughout her trials and tribulations.
Point goes to the
original.
course, Susan B. Anthony didn't fight against inequality all by herself. She had a ton of supporters to back her up. But unfortunately, Joanna only has one supporter. Well, there is another one, which I'll discuss a little later, but only one for the majority of the film. So let's see which one of those one supporters was more supportive.
Best Bobby?
Best Bobby.
Hey.
Get smart, tune up and start. Whistle while you work.
Let's go.
Bobby Markowitz is Joanna's new best friend in Stepford and the comic relief in both movies. Well, maybe I can't say that about the remake since that had a more comedic edge on the whole, but I have better things to contemplate. Anyway, Bobby's an easygoing smartass who's not going to become one of those cookie-baking drones without a fight. And I'm sure she put up a good one.
Ironically,
but she is also a very caring and supportive best friend to Joanna. So where the remake messed up with Joanna, does it make up by giving us the better Bobby? Well, no, but this one was significantly closer than with Joanna. Both Paula Prentice and Bette Midler really capture Bobby's freewheeling punk persona and have some of the best lines in both movies.
You see, Doctor, my problem is that given complete freedom of choice, I don't want to squeeze the goddamn Charmin.
Excuse me, is this guy bothering you?
Yes, he's my husband.
There's this thing they've invented. It's called mocking. Doesn't interest me. I'm a natural-born bargeman.
She's drunk. There's no need. She's blonde.
Yeah, Bobby is probably my favorite character from both films, but I think I have to give the slight edge to Paula Prentice. For one thing, she has a bit more screen time than Midler's Bobby, playing the Watson to Joanna Sherlock and solving the mystery of the Stepford Wives. Hell, she even plays Sherlock herself at times, like how she theorizes that the Stepford Men's Association might be tainting the water they drink with drugs that induce subservience, and even suggests they take it to have it examined. From what I remember, Midler's Bobby only plays detective with Joanna in one scene, and I don't recall any theories that she comes up with about what's going on with the wives. But more importantly, I feel her chemistry with Joanna is much more meaningful in this version. Sure, they had a decent bond in the remake, but these two have one of the best connections as best friends I've ever seen in media, and this line really seals it.
And we'll move. Hey, you too. You can't break up a team like us. We're the best thing to happen since Laurel and Hardy.
So this really makes when Joanna finds Bobby's been Stepfordized all the more gut-wrenching. Honestly, I wish it was these two who got the happy ending instead of in the remake. I will give the new Bobby credit that she has more of a backstory where she's a popular author, even if her latest book title is as disturbing as Stepford itself.
What was it called? It was about your relationship with your mother.
I love you, but please die.
Oh!
They also make her Jewish in this version, which does lead to a funny gag of the Stepford Wives trying to be not so sensitively sensitive during their discussion about how to decorate their houses for Christmas.
Or maybe I could just use hundreds of pine cones to spell out the words Big Jew in letters 15 feet tall in the snow in my front yard.
It was a close one, at least compared to Joanna in the next round, but her chemistry with Joanna doesn't feel quite as strong, nor is her detective trait utilized as much, and since the original nailed both of these traits, I think it's fitting to give it the point.
Point goes to the old.
It's like some alien friction.
Okay, before we move on to round 3, I think I just need to clarify something quickly about the wives in both movies.
In case you haven't seen these films, the Stepford Wives' origins are portrayed in different fashions. In the original novel, 75 film, and director's cut of the remake, more info on that last one a bit later, the Stepford Men's Association frickin' murdered the original wives and replaced them with barely sentient robot lookalikes. In the final cut of the new film, the Stepford Wives are the original wives with nanochips installed in their brains and surgically enhanced to look smoking hot. I'm not going to get into which take is better right now. I just felt I hadn't made the Stepford process clear to those unfamiliar with the story and wanted to take a second to do so.
But moving on, you can't fight against sexism without sexists themselves, because then there would be no sexism.
Pick on the villains.
Which would be nice, but then there'd be no story. So now let's look at the most sexist bad guys in movie history.
It's not right for a woman to read. Soon she starts getting ideas and thinking.
Well,
never mind.
I mean, these guys kill
Outside
us.
Disney. Let's just say outside Disney.
Okay, point taken, but second place ain't bad. This is best
The
villain.
Stepford Men's Society. Here it comes. it's gonna be
Just gonna
another one.
say it right off the bat, this one is hands down the most one-sided round. One movie nails the villains, and the other just ruins them. No prizes for guessing which does which.
Original?
No, not even Christopher Walken could save this one. The original Stepford Men's Association is a group of diabolical masterminds composed of the most important figures in the town, from the firefighters, the police, the doctors, the telephone company, and that's just to name a few. And each one plays an important role in the conspiracy to create the robotic duplicates of their wives that will obey their every whim. Like the Stepford forensic scientist obtains the voices for the robots by having the original wives record a long list of words under the pretense that it's for a new forensics method of identifying suspects that they're having all the residents do. Well, those without nutsacks anyway. An artist designs the bots by doing what the wife thinks is just an innocent sketch of her during the club's visit to her house, even though a simple photo probably would have been less time-consuming. And the bots are put together using the expertise of the town's computer tech labs and the experience with building robots that the club president Dale Koba has working as a Disneyland technician. Even those with the most trivial jobs in town still play crucial roles in the conspiracy, like there's a scene where a grocery boy accidentally misdirects two cars into backing into each other, so the lady in one of them will be hurt and they'll have an excuse for the town doctors to come and take the woman away to the association. The hospital to be finished off. Replaced. Cured. Yeah, that's it. Cured of her insubordination to her husband. Cured of... Nah, you know damn well what I mean. Yeah, it's pretty creepy how people who are supposed to be there to help you are actually conspiring against you, isn't it? And even though the Stepford Men's Association is able to give a very genuine and friendly appearance towards Joanna and Bobby on the whole, they do drop a few very subtle clues of their true sexist colors every now and then.
You and Fred can walk around at night, but I'd stick a little closer to home.
There's no such thing as a cleaner compeller. If there was, I would patent it myself, make $1 million, win the Nobel Prize, and retire.
Sneaky misogyny, huh? In the remake, they're...
Have a 4th of July, everybody!
A joke, to be polite. Yeah, with the exception of the club president and Walter Eberhart, the Stepford Men's Association in the remake is a gang of lazy alcoholic idiots, none of whom could have done any of this without the help of the club president. Speaking of which, let's talk about the president, called Dale Koba in the original and Mike Wellington in the remake. Dale may not have as much screen time as Mike, but he gets across a lot with the time he does have, coming dangerously close to rivaling Gaston's smug, slimy sexism.
I like to watch women doing little domestic chores.
You came to the right town. Why?
Why? Because we can.
Yeesh. Creepy.
We found a way of doing it, and it's just perfect.
Not to mention, he's also a terrifying evil genius, especially in the climax where he has Walter trick Joanna into thinking her kids are at the association and plays a tape recorder of them calling out to her for help to lure her into his clutches. You also have to wonder how he got the little tykes to record this. Did he threaten them? Did he threaten their mom? Did he manipulate them by making having a Stepford wife or a mom sound appealing like he did with the husbands? Leaving it to the imagination makes it all the more scary. And the big final confrontation, good luck sleeping after watching him there. Not to mention we see he kidnapped her dog. Douchebag. Christopher Walken did fine with the smug, sexist asshole component of the character, but he's nowhere near as intimidating or diabolical. And that's really surprising because I know he has the talent for it. Plus, there's a twist about the character that really screws things up, but I'd rather save that for the best story round. So I guess all that's left is Joanna's husband, Walter Eberhart, and this one is kinda complicated. At first, this may seem like the most one-sided of them all. Matthew Broderick as a slimy, sexist creep, probably his most out-of-place casting since Harold Hill in The Music Man, especially since the original, played by Peter Masterson, did so damn well with the character. But the thing is, they kind of take the character in a different direction. Unlike the original, where their relationship was doomed from the start, Walter and Joanna actually have a good relationship for most of the remake, and Walter's a pretty loving husband and father, but the association uses Joanna's ego and accomplishments to try and manipulate him into feeling second-rate and want a Stepford wife himself. but his conscience won't let him go through with it, so he pretends to have his wife turned into a robot to gain the villain's trust, but sneaks into the control room and destroys the nanochips in the other wives' brains, freeing them from the association's control. And to be honest, I can't call that a bad take. I mean, I think it goes without saying that not every husband can be manipulated into a self-righteous misogynist willing to brainwash or replace his wife, because some men do genuinely love their spouses, even if they are having marriage problems. I can't say whether this take is better than the original Walter, who is just as slimy and sexist as the other bad guys, which Peter Masterson perfectly captured, but it is an interesting take either way. So I think Walter is a tie, but that doesn't make up for the fact that the other members of the association in the remake are a pathetic shell of the manipulative criminal masterminds of the original. They're kind of funny, I admit, but being the lesser of two evils won't win you this round.
Point goes to the original.
I thought you were ready. I thought I knew you.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's why they made him bumbling into the remake. Like, again, there is the whole comedy focus angle of it all, but let's be real. If they were as smart as what they were doing in the original, Walter would not have gotten away with that, you know? Maybe he would have, maybe he wouldn't, I don't know. Do you think he would have? I mean, play them against each other and all that? I mean, you could see that, right? But anyway, I think we're near the end, so 3 down, 2 to go.
And now for the big one, the Stepford Wives themselves, aka Gaston's wet dream / Susan B. Anthony's worst nightmare. These are the best Stepford Wives.
Come on, get smart, tune up and start. I whistle while you work.
First off, no, it was not a mistake that I used a photo of a man to represent the Stepford Wives, the remake, for the title card of this round. I'll explain the reason for that in a little bit. Anyway, if I had to find some legit advantage the remake had over the original, it would funny enough have to be with the Stepford Wives themselves. Why? Really? Well, first off, let me discuss that change that Goldman and Levine were pissed about that I mentioned earlier. In the novel and original draft of the movie, the wives were dressed in more sexy, stripper-like outfits, but apparently because the director's wife, who plays Carol Van Sant, didn't look great in that getup, they changed the outfits to 50s housewives attire. Goldman and Levine's opinion on this was, well, to quote another of William Goldman's works, inconceivable! Mainly because they felt this somewhat hampered the sexism commentary they wanted to convey, and I somewhat agree with that. Not that the 50s housewife get-ups weren't sexually archaic either, but if you were a slimy misogynist and wanted to turn your wife into a robotic, subservient drone, would you rather have them dressed like Betty Crocker or Marilyn Monroe? Thought so. The wives in the remake stay closer to this by dressing as models, and while their outfits aren't that revealing, they do still seem closer to what a sexist pervert would desire. Another thing about the original that kind of bothered me was, even though the wives are 100% custom-made robots, the men did hardly anything to make the women physically sexier than before. Not that they weren't pretty already, but all they really do is put on a bit more makeup and give them slightly larger breasts. And that's really about it. You guys have the capability to build completely lifelike robots. Utilize your resources. Even though it's just surgery in the remake, the men actually do enhance the wives to physically look more like a sexist creep's wet dream. I also like their personalities in the remake a little more. The Stepford Wives in the original are mostly just generic 50s housewife stereotypes, which is what they're supposed to be, but also makes them very boring. The remake portrays them more like bimbos with IQs of negative 207, which does make them a lot more memorable.
I call my program Clairobics, because their name is Claire.
Where's Boba Fett? They were out? Bob, here's $500.
Don't worry, the original is still much better on the whole and is going to win the final round. Big shock, but this I feel is the remake's one true triumph over it. But I think what seals the deal for me here is, one of the few ideas of the remake I feel was successfully utilized was how a gay couple endured the Stepford process. In this version, there's a new character named Roger, played by Roger Bart, who's the third member of Joanna and Bobby's friend group. Roger's very effeminate and stereotypically gay, but his partner, who's more masculine and even a Republican, isn't too on board with that, and feels that while everyone should choose who they want to be with, they should behave more like the gender they were born as. So when Roger is Stepfordized, instead of becoming a mindless housewife drone, Roger becomes a mindless Republican politician running for senator of Stepford. And honestly, that was a really creative way to update the story to modern times. On top of that, Roger's a pretty funny character and really delivers a lot of the film's humor.
I howled, "You've become a gay Republican." And he said, "What's wrong with that?" I said, "What's wrong with that? That's like wanting to be gay with a bad haircut."
There's a character who's kind of like Roger in the original named Charmaine, played by Tina Louise, aka Ginger Grant, aka the last surviving cast member of Gilligan's Island, aka the only cast member from the original whose name I recognized, but she doesn't get to interact with Joanna and Bobby much before she gets Stepfordized, so we don't really get to know her that well. Just that she's unhappy because she feels her husband Ed only loves her for her looks. Roger, on the other hand, is Stepfordized just shortly before Bobby is, so we get to know and have fun with him a lot more. For all the things the original creamed the remake in, I do feel it handled the Stepford Wives much better than in the original, having them be more like how a sexist, lustful creep would want them to be like, and also updating the process to include gay couples. So congrats remake, you did earn the point on this one.
Point goes
to the new ones.
I thought we were friends.
For once, the news got their one.
Once again, it's all time. Wait.
No, it
isn't.
ain't.
Well, in any case, there's still one more round in this case of misogyny played for sci-fi, the best story.
Come on, get smart, tune up and start. I whistle while you work.
Let me start off by saying that I'm totally on board for a more comedic retelling of the Stepford Wives, and like said before, the jokes in the movie are not half bad, especially those from Bobby and Roger. I also like gags like how Mike explains how they take control of the wives in the style of a 1950s educational video, kind of fitting seeing how they turned the women into 1950s housewives. But decent comedy can't save a weak story itself, and, well, let's get right into it. Let's look at the biggest problem, the ending. Like said before, the original cut of the film did have the 75 films ending revealing the wives were killed and replaced with robots, Joanna being killed, and her robot duplicate shopping at the store with the rest of the wives. But Frank Oz went through a reprisal of what happened with Little Shop of Horrors as test audiences opposed that ending, so the happy one with the nanochips was filmed instead. Let me clarify, if you want to give the story a happy ending, you be my guest. Honestly, the original film's ending was such a downer, it is pretty nice to see Joanna and Bobby get a legit happy ending in this version. Hell, I don't even mind that the husband's comeuppance is just them being forced to do all the chores they had the wives do instead of life in prison. The punishment's gotta fit the crime after all. With that said, if you want to change the story, you kind of have to change the story. When this ending was filmed, for some reason Oz didn't change or edit most of the scenes, making it painfully obvious that the wives were robots. Yeah, nanochips don't make your wife's breasts mechanically expand or money come out of their mouth like a frickin' ATM. Now they could have changed the story so that it was revealed that the wives had been turned into cyborgs, but no, all the men are said to do is put nanochips into the wives' brains and surgically enhance them. Actually, strike that, that wouldn't have worked either because there were also scenes that indicated that these robots were not the originals. Like before Roger is Stepfordized, we get a scene where the association shows him a surprise unseen by the audience that shocks him, very clearly supposed to be his robot duplicates. But get this, right after we get that admittedly funny 50s video explaining that they just put nanochips into the wives' brains, the association literally frickin' shows Joanna the robot of her that they'd been building. But you know what? Even if they did keep the final cut of the ending where the wives were replaced by robots, it still wouldn't have worked because all these scenes take out virtually all the mystery from the story. The original, on the other hand, kept the twist well hidden, and thus we're all the more intrigued and invested as Joanna and Bobby try to deduce what's happening with the wives in the town, like any good mystery film for that matter. But at the same time, the film did offer us some very subtle clues, like that scene in the intro of that guy purchasing a female sex doll, Charmaine's husband Ed leaving the association at night in a traumatized state, indicating that he's just gone through with murdering his wife. He gets over it pretty quickly though. And of course,
I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. I'll just die if I don't get this recipe.
And let's look at how they officially reveal the twist. So you might be wondering why I kept using the word archaic in this review. Well, it's because it plays an important role in said scene. See, when Joanna and Bobby are trying to progress the Stepford Wives early in the movie, Joanna voices how it's sexually archaic of the association to not let women join. The wife asks what archaic means, and Bobby answers that it means outdated. In the third act, when Joanna is just starting to piece together the horrible truth, she tests Stepford Bobby by asking her what archaic means. Only this time Bobby answers,
don't know.
I don't know.
It's here that Joanna realizes that archaic wasn't on the long list of words the forensic scientist had her record, so to 100% verify her hunch, she stabs Bobby in the stomach.
Joanna.
How could you do a thing like that? How could you do a thing like that?
When I was just going to give you coffee. When I was just going to give you coffee.
Is that the most simultaneously hilarious and terrifying reveal in a movie or what? I will give the remake credit on the fact that it did update the motives of the villains to present day pretty well. The original was set in the mid-70s, so we can just assume that they're sexists unwilling to change with the sudden progressivism of the time. But since the remake is set in 2004, we needed a bit more of an explained motive, so they kind of elaborated on how most of the wives had really big and important jobs like CEOs and airport directors, and were the primary breadwinners of the family, while their husbands had crappy low-level jobs. This made the husbands feel jealous and second-rate, inspiring them to turn on their spouses. Good way to update the story. But I think my biggest issue with the remake is that twist with Mike I mentioned earlier. Apparently Mike wasn't the mastermind behind Stepford after all. His wife, played by Glenn Close, was. After she caught her real husband having an affair and murdered him, she felt he cheated on her because her drive and ambition was putting him off. So she founded Stepford to try and help other women's marriages by making them into the perfect housewives a man could ask for. That was just... no. One, it comes completely out of nowhere. And two, this whole story is a commentary on misogyny, so doesn't having it turn out that a woman was behind Stepford kind of defeat the purpose of the whole story? Okay, this review's run on a bit too long, so to wrap up, I can't necessarily say avoid the remake at all costs, because most of its jokes did make me laugh, and I was able to admire at least a few of the new ideas it had, but a complete lack of mystery and consistency makes it pale as snow in comparison to the original, which despite Levine and Goldman's complaints, had both consistency and a good mystery, making it the vastly superior movie.
Point goes to the old.
Very
And the
rightly
victor.
deserving winner.
What
Too bad.
they done to you?
And well, blame the director on that one. That, or I guess the comedy focus angle, did not work out well for them. Woof. And there we go, the Stepford Wives. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Until next time, like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoyed. See you around, everybody. Adios.